This book took my boys from kids who resisted writing at all costs to kids who love it and ask for it. When I look into a curriculum with you, I don't like to give it as a review. I call them spotlights, because I'm not telling you what's good about it and why you should get it necessarily. It's more like we're having a conversation as much as we can. Because for me, that's the way I like to learn about new curriculum. I like to sit down with someone, look through it, chit chat, ask what they like, what they don't like, that sort of thing. And so that's what I try to do with these. So I will start by sharing that kind of information, and then I will turn it down and let you look inside of it. If you check down in the down bar, I will have the timestamps so you can see the different parts if you want to jump ahead. So the first thing, if you have never heard of this book, it's not a homeschool curriculum. It's by a nonprofit called 826 National, which is a organization that does after-school writing projects. So it is written for a large group, but it's super adaptable to the home. And I really mean it. Sometimes you'll hear people say that about, lesson plans, and then you actually go to do it in your homeschool and you're like, oh, this is not easy. This one is easy to adapt. I bought it from Amazon. You can buy it from their website as well. Cost on Amazon is about $20, but check their used section, because I got it with shipping, I think it was $7 or $8. So very affordable. It's not consumable, so you can sell it when you're done. The blue version is for ages 5 to 12. Most of the lessons in here are not that full span of ages. So if you want to get it and then use it here and there throughout their elementary career, this would be a great choice. My boys this year, when we used it, were 5th grade and 7th grade. But like I said, they were really resistant writers, so I wanted something that would be a little easier, a little more approachable. There is also a yellow version, which is the middle school version. That's what we'll use next year. Again, check on Amazon used section. Right now they have some copies that are like $3 plus shipping, so very inexpensive. I saw on their website they also have a couple other versions of it. There's one that's called STEM to Story, which I think we're going to get to incorporate in science next year. So there are different ones. So check their website, check Amazon. So what did I love about it? Got my notes. One thing I really loved about it was, the first thing I really loved about it is the activities were high interest. Now, stay tuned a little bit, and I'm going to talk about some of our favorite activities, but they were really engaging activities that were not dumbed down. Something else I really liked about it was the variety. Again, when I talk about some of our favorite ones, I will share, you'll see some of the variety, but they had everything in here from recipe writing, joke writing, biography, autobiography, fiction, poems, several different poetry activities. There was something for everyone, and because of how high interest they were, even when my boys thought they weren't going to like it, such as with poetry, they ended up enjoying the activity at least well enough, because this book made them feel confident in their ability to write. And that, there's nothing better than that for me with these boys at this age. Something else that I really liked about this was the activities. Like I said, they're easy to adapt to a homeschool format, but not just that. If you want to do them in a different way, so one of the activities in here is called Talking Trash. And in one activity, you imagine that you're thousands of years in the future, and you look at different items around your home and propose like what people may think that item was for. And then there's one in reverse that, or back thousands of years ago, and looking at an object, and And now, so then we were thinking about like, what could that object have been used for? What modern object, if it had been in ancient times, what it could have been used for. Does that make sense? So that was supposed to be a writing activity. We ended up doing it as an oral, because that oral tradition, of course, so many countries for thousands of years have spread their history through oral tradition. So doing that in an oral fashion is still a great activity, because it's still teaching them the art of story. There was another activity that I'll talk about that we were really enjoying, so we expanded upon it and made it a larger one. So not only can the activities be done in a different, or easy to adapt to a different format, they can be expanded upon. If you're not enjoying one, you can shrink it down, or if your time constraints means that you need to do less of it, it's easy to do that too. So after hearing that, you probably have a sense of who this kind of a writing book is not good for. One is someone who needs a highly structured curriculum, someone who needs a repetitive curriculum, so the format, if your kid needs that standard format, not a great fit. If you need something that's written to the child that they can do independently, not a good fit. Otherwise, whether you use it as a standalone or a supplement, I think this is something that is going to be a good fit for a lot of homeschools. And I very rarely say that, because I know that so much of what I use has a very selective audience. This one, I think, has a much broader audience than most of the curriculum that I review and use. Now, as for what a lesson looks like, I'm only going to give you a brief one because I do have another video where I show more in depth. But a short version is that at the beginning of each lesson, they have some kind of an introductory activity. Now, these are really for a larger format, a larger group. So I do have to adapt. I have had to adapt more of that. And a lot of times we would just talk. Sometimes we would do an activity that would go along with it, but a lot of times it was just an oral discussion. Then we would start the writing activity. At the beginning of the year, I would set the timer for just 3 minutes for the initial writing, because that's all I could get my boys to do without resistance. We would do it for 3 minutes, then they would run Grammarly check, then they would go back to their existing writing and make a few changes. I would change the number, usually 3 changes. So a more specific noun or verb choice, add an adjective, those kind of just small changes. And then I would give them another chunk of 3-5 minutes to continue writing. By the end of the year, that first chunk was somewhere around 15 minutes, depending on the activity. I'm not sure if I said this already, but we did do this as a together subject. Sometimes they would want to share their writing, but not always. Sometimes they would share their writing with me and we would do some kind of an edit together, not always. My goal for the year was to get them to be willing to sit down and do some writing. And that was met. Whatever else happened was a secondary benefit. That was my sole goal for the school year. So for a couple of the activities that we really enjoyed, one of them, and this was the first one we did, was called a fort party. So I sent the boys downstairs to build a fort in the living room. And then we got inside of it. It was big, it took up our entire living room, but we got inside of it. And we started the writing orally. So it had 3 different writing activities for that one. One of them was write a story that starts in your fort and ends in the North Pole. So we did that out loud, and they each told me a story. The second one was a poem where every line begins with "inside my fort." And the third one was write directions explaining how to find your fort. So that's what we started with. After we did that, Then they took one of those and wrote out a version of it. It was a really fun way to just get their imaginations sparked and to help them see that writing can be a lot of fun. Another one we really enjoyed was called Any Which Way, and it was basically a choose your own adventure story. Now we took this idea and ended up creating it on Google Forms because we set it up so that they could share it with each other and then progress through the story on their own. I would like to do a video showing how I did this, but there are other YouTube videos as well. But it was a lot of fun because they could write a paragraph and then give their two options, and then the reader could choose from there, and then we linked the parts. It was not complicated, but you had to give it some thought. But it was such a fun way to do it. They enjoyed the writing of the adventure, but they also really enjoyed learning Google Slides or Google Forms. It was just another way to do a writing story. One that we really liked that ended up becoming a much bigger project than what was in here was called If I Were King, and so creating your own country. We took some of the ideas from here and then expanded it. So they had to create a flag, and they found a flag maker on the internet that they could use, and you put in your own symbols and your colors, and it created it for you. So they did that. A decree of laws, absolute laws, and with the encouragement that these need to be kind of extreme type things. Description of the country, so like what it looks like, culture, holidays, that sort of thing. They had to draw a map of their area, which my youngest son, it actually inspired him. He found a YouTube channel that had a fantasy map making playlist, and he has become a map making addict. He loves it. So it was fun to see like something that an unintended consequence that he's really enjoyed. So this one took us, I think all of this ended up taking us about 4 or 5 days. It said that it should be one session of 2 hours. That was definitely not for us. We needed more time, but it was a lot of fun. And they ended up with like this whole idea of this country that you had a real sense of in 5th and 7th grade level of what it would be like to visit there and what you might see while you're there. And then one more was called Cooking for Cryptids. And I will try to remember to put these numbers down there in case you're interested. Cooking for Cryptids, which I didn't know what a cryptid was. I had to look it up. They knew. I didn't. But it's like a Loch Ness Monster or a Yeti, that kind of thing. So we developed recipes for them. Now what we ended up doing was we did 2. I let them each pick. So they did a cookie recipe and a snow cone recipe. So first they had to decide on a creature, and we did some research and watched some videos, and we did all of that. Then they picked a creature, and then they had to find out where it lives and find out what naturally grows there. So they took a basic cookie recipe. I think they both ended up choosing a cookie dough or a chocolate chip cookie base, and then made substitutions based on what naturally goes there. So what grains grow in the area, what nuts, what fruit, whatever it is. And then the same with the snow cone. So obviously you need ice, but then what flavors are going to be in there? What could we use to make syrups out of it? So then that research that they did also kind of tied into geography then, because they were learning about what grows in a place. And then how do you write a recipe, and how do you make your ingredients list, step-by-step directions. So again, while they took a basic recipe and adapted it, they still had to think through to make sure that what they were including, so if they included nuts, for example, you had to include the step to crack open the nuts and use it. So that was a really fun Okay, so let's take a good look inside. And yes, that's my cat. We just got back from vacation. He's desperate for my attention, so he's joining me for the video. That's as far as I can get him away from me. So table of contents gives us a short description for each activity, as well as the grade level that it is geared for. So that, especially if you're doing this over multiple years, it'd be easy to track, or mark which ones are for which school year. So this is Support Party, one of our favorites. At the top of each page, they tell you what they expect, how many sessions, and how long each one's going to take you. This is definitely geared for those who are doing this in a group format. We never had them take, to do the activity as directed-ish, adapted for our homeschool, we never had them to take this long. We did go longer on some of them, but that was because of the way we chose to do things. But so just know that, like, when you see this, that timing may not be accurate for you at all. And they also list your materials, which I really appreciate having that right there at the front, so that I don't get into an activity and realize that there's materials I need that I don't have. So then the way it's laid out is it just starts giving you the information, and like it'll say before the workshop begins, so like what you would need to do if you're doing this in a group format, or even in your own, any setup that needs to happen, that kind of stuff. Then they give you some timing, which again, the timing has not been accurate for us. And then it just goes through the activity. Now, the pages that are gray like this are supposed to be student pages. You can, obviously, you could tear them out or photocopy them for your own home. We just would kind of look at them and then do our own sketching out of if there was anything we needed to pre-plan. We did not do most of the handwriting, though. One of my boys has dysgraphia, and it's just easier to type instead. So this is an example of a activity that had multiple sessions, 20 in fact. And you can see they break it down. So session 1, this is what's happening. Session 2, session 3. It's very scannable, which I like when it's broken down like that. When they're just one long session, I find it not as scannable, but that's okay. I can take the extra time, but I do really like it when it's easy to scan through the sections. So each section, that's pretty well how it's laid out. It doesn't change too much. If you're wondering what the rest of the kitty looks like, there he is. I'm not going to go detailed into each lesson because they're all basically the same format. But I did want to give you a look at what it actually looks like inside. Character assassination, that was another one that my kids really enjoyed doing. And if you have any questions about it, be sure to leave a comment down below. I will also link the video for the day, like what a lesson looks like. And if you click on the video on your screen right now, you can go check out a couple other engaging writing programs.